There is no limit on chum salmon bycatch, and there has never been a limit on chum salmon bycatch, despite the fact that subsistence communities throughout western Alaska rely on this fish. Now, there are population crashes and return failures of chum salmon. In light of this, the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council, who are supposed to be regulating these fisheries, had their advisory panel issue some recommendations on what they ought to do to address the issue. The advisory panel then carefully analyzed trends in chum salmon bycatch and came up with a very reasonable range of options for the Npfmc to address this issue, including bycatch caps going from 22,000 to 54,000 fish. The Npfmc, after receiving this recommendation from their own advisory panel, made the bold decision not to implement any bycatch caps at all. Here's what they said. Bill Twite, a council member from Washington, acknowledged the horrific scale of what he called a humanitarian crisis brought about by the declines in chum salmon. Then he went on to defend the council's inaction by saying,
"As a body, we need to make absolutely certain that we're doing everything we can to avoid making this crisis any worse than it already is."
Mr. Twite did not elaborate on how bycatch caps could possibly make the situation worse. Worse for who? Worse for subsistence fishermen? No, wouldn't affect them. Wouldn't affect any Alaskan fishermen. Worse for the salmon? There's no way that capping bycatch would make things worse for the struggling chum salmon. No, the only group whose situation could be made worse by bycatch caps for chum salmon is the trawl industry. We'd like to thank Mr. Twite for making the priorities and the allegiances of the Npfmc so abundantly obvious with his comment. Meanwhile, Councilmember Kenny Down thanked the subsistence fishermen of Western Alaska for pressuring the council to take action, saying,
"That provides the urgency we need to move this as quickly as we possibly can in the process that we have, which is not known for being quick, but it's the process we've got."
He's glad that subsistence fishermen are pressuring them because it gives them motivation to act. That's nice. Personally, as an adult, I like to do my job without having to be pressured by someone, but apparently that's what the Npfmc needs. Except it doesn't work. Instead of instituting any actual bycatch caps on chum salmon, the Npfmc instead approved a plan which establishes the ways in which such caps could be created, and then passes the buck to the National Marine Fisheries Service when it comes to actually doing the research and establishing those caps. No word yet on when or if that's actually going to happen.
But it's the process we've got.
It's the process we've got. Here's how that process works. Number 1, establish an advisory panel made up of Alaskans to hear Alaska's concerns. Number 2, ignore everything your advisory panel says. Number 3, just say we need more information, and then you can delay action for as long as you want, because nobody will ever know when you have enough information. Number 4, wash, rinse, repeat every time another population crashes. Then, when you leave the Npfmc, you just get a job as a consultant or whatever for the trawl industry, and you become rich. In light of population declines, a changing climate, and the gauntlet of trawler nets that these fish have to get through to return to their spawning grounds, how many more years of information gathering and Npfmc dawdling can the chum salmon survive? I'm Paul Jones, and this is your bycatch report for the week of April 8th, 2023. We're going to start with the Chinook salmon, a species which does have bycatch caps in place. During the week of April 8th, 2023, in the Bering Sea Aleutian Islands fishery, the trawl fleet destroyed 245 Chinook salmon. Meanwhile, in the Gulf of Alaska fishery, an additional 382 Chinook salmon were destroyed. Now, on to halibut. The combined total halibut mortality for the Gulf of Alaska and Bering Sea Aleutian Islands fisheries during the week of April 8th was 90,389 pounds of halibut, which averages out to about 538 pounds of halibut every hour. And the sad part is, that was kind of a slow week. Let's talk crabs. Last week in the Bering Sea Aleutian Islands fishery, the trawl fleet destroyed 848 apelio, or snow crabs, 7,336 Bairdi crabs, and 2,188 Alaskan red king crabs. Well, that's all for this week, folks. We'd like to thank NOAA for providing the data that we use in the Bycatch report, and most of all, we'd like to thank you for watching and for sharing. Remember, every fish counts. Until next week, I'm Paul Jones. This is the Alaska Bycatch Report.